Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good day to you guys. How's it going? Good to see everyone. Good to see everyone over on Facebook. Good to see everyone over on YouTube. It's a wonderful day. I had a fantastic AD&D game last night. I'm here to tell you all about that, talk about what's coming up later this week, and just generally chat about anything and everything role-playing game related. Adam on YouTube getting us started saying, that is some neat Chimera artwork. I dig it. So he's talking about the thumbnail. And if you can't see it over on Facebook, if you check out the live stream on YouTube, you can see that thumbnail. That's one thing I hate that Facebook does is it will, is once your video's over, your thumbnail just becomes a smear, just a blur in the background if they even show it at all. So that sucks. But if you check that out, if you go over to YouTube and you look, you can see that thumbnail. And let me tell you a little bit about that thumbnail. That is a piece by Tracy Lesh. The Tracy Lesh, who has been a guest on the show several times, and we hope to have him on again here real soon. That is my buddy Tracy Lesh. I'm proud to say that. Tracy Lesh, who is proximate to my location. He is actually just up the highways away from me, right here in Central Florida. Original D&D artist, Tracy Lesh. That's right. That art you're seeing right there is a new piece of artwork. Brand new by Mr. Tracy Lesh, who was one of the founding members of TSR, founding employees of TSR. He did this lovely piece back here behind me is his work, the fighter battling a giant snake. Now, this color, first of all, this is a canvas print. This is not the original. That was created for TSR, to use in later D&D books, but they actually did not. So the rights reverted back to Tracy. So that, I mean, you guys see it every day. Okay, I get that. But if you're just coming to this video for the first time, whether you're watching it live on Facebook or YouTube, or you come back later and you've never heard the story behind that before, that is unreleased TSR artwork right there. And Tracy and his lovely wife, Shelby, gifted me that canvas print, and it is it is one of my favorite things. I'm so happy to have that. So that's the story behind the Chimera artwork there. Tracy based that on adventures on ongoing events in our Monday night AD&D campaign, which doesn't that dovetail nicely into the main subject of today's talk about what goes on in the Monday night AD&D game. Chris says, howdy, back from a week off grid. It was glorious. Welcome back, Chris. Good to see you. I unfortunately am never off grid. I am on grid all the time, which, for better or worse, that's how things are. But I'm here for you guys. So you guys have an advantage. You can listen to me or watch me wherever. You can take a mobile phone and get reception. I, on the other hand, am anchored here all the time. YouTube doesn't let me stream live off my phone, although Facebook does. But again, see Facebook. I suppose I could record videos just with my phone and then upload them to YouTube. But then I would lose all this cool interactivity that I have with you guys. So I'm going to copy this real quick because it occurs to me I haven't put the good word on the Discord. So if you're sitting over on Discord and you're looking for something to do for your lunchtime or even morning routine, I'm going to put the link to today's chat right in there. My friends over at the RPG Gamers Discord, and of course, 1E like it's 1983. So you guys, if you want to hop on over and say hi, that's fine. The link is also in my Discord. And by the way, you might be wondering, he keeps saying Discord over and over and over. I said never let it expire. So if you're not familiar with Discord, it's a great little community live chat system. Works a bit like IRC. If you know or knew what IRC is, you can join, and you can post memes, and you can shit post, and you can argue with other people. It's awesome. It's fun. Come join us. The link is in the chat. The link is also in the Facebook chat comments section. But you can just hop on over, and we'll discuss anything relevant to first edition AD&D, tabletop RPGs in general, this live stream, memes, all sorts of fun. So let's talk about the schedule coming up this week. Tomorrow. Now, I don't know for sure 100%. It's difficult to tell with the lockdown chaos that's going on in Australia when Kyle will be available to stream, because we stream at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights here. That is 9 o'clock on Thursday morning there. So Kyle will have the kinder underfoot if there's a lockdown and they can't go to school, or for whatever reason. But things have been looking up, but we'll see. Hopefully tomorrow, Kyle will be able to stream. Also tomorrow, Wednesday, Kyle and I, or just myself, we will have a guest. We will have Aurora Williams, who is a participant in the Monday night AD&D game. She is a longtime gamer and has many insights on geek culture and gaming and all sorts of cool stuff. So Aurora will be here. It's not going to be like a big, super formal thing. We're just going to sit and hold court on some stuff for a little while, crack open a cold, frosty beverage, and talk to our good friend Aurora Williams. So be here. Now, when I say be here, I mean be here on YouTube. If you're a fan of watching the show on Facebook, I completely understand. But due to connectivity issues, rather than using Discord to communicate to Kyle and to Aurora, we're going to be using StreamYard. StreamYard is a freemium web-based streaming hub where you take your camera inputs, you go straight into StreamYard, and then StreamYard distributes your camera feeds out to different streaming services, YouTube streaming, Twitch, Facebook, on and on and on. But here's the thing. I multicast thanks to a little widget in almost a Discord, in OBS. I can just go in and plug in the RTMP connections into the widget that is in OBS, and it will go both places. It'll go to Facebook and to YouTube. The guys over at StreamYard, of course, they pay for the bandwidth. So if you want to multicast, you have to have a subscription. You have to have a paid subscription to multicast. I don't have that. It's a little steep for my budget, unfortunately. So rather than being able to multicast to them, I'm really not going to be able to do it. So if we go StreamYard tomorrow, The live stream will only be on YouTube. I'll link to it on Facebook. And Facebook friends, I'm not firing you guys. I'm not saying screw the Facebook guys. I started this on Facebook. YouTube is the secondary. It's just StreamYard doesn't let me go multiple places. And I'm sorry. I genuinely am. If I had the money to get a StreamYard account, as it were, so we could multi-stream, I would do it, but I don't. So it will just be on YouTube. Now, so that's tomorrow. That's Wednesday. Thursday, of course, we'll talk some more Greyhawk Gods and spicing up your campaign and so on and etc. Friday, we'll have a show. We'll have a normal show. For whatever value normal is around these parts. I don't know that it'll be as spicy as last Friday's. If there's something that you guys think would make me exceptionally angry and is tabletop gaming related, feel free to send it my way and I can guarantee it'll be. But aside from that, Friday's show will be Friday's show. Friday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, that's 8. Or is it? Yeah, that's 8 Central, and so it'd be 6 o'clock over on the left coast. I will be with Yang and Zhao. We will be talking about what makes a good campaign and getting a good campaign started. So we're going to be talking about many of the elements that I've kind of touched on in the How to Play AD&D series that I've been doing for this channel. So yeah, I will be on Yang's show. I'll share the stream links just as soon as we get them, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I really like talking to Yang. He puts together just a hell of a good live stream. You should all go watch. Go subscribe to Storytime with Yang and Zhao on YouTube. You know what? Here, I'm going to look at what I'm doing, everyone. I'm going to share the link to his channel with you so you can start watching his stuff now. I've been on his show before, so you can actually go over there and watch that video and watch lots of other videos. So, Storytime with Yang and Zhao. And it's a great YouTube channel. It's a small YouTube channel like mine, but it's growing. So you should absolutely check it out. He's got shorter videos. You don't have to sit there for 90 minutes and listen to him talk. But like he had comic artist Peter Cimetti on the other night. He's better at getting nicer people on his show than I am. But yeah, last month he and I talked about old school D&D versus modern. He's had science fiction author Jayashiro Finney. I've been on Ishii's show in the past. Don't know if I will be again. Rob Murto, Ryan Hack. Lots and lots of great interviews. So you should absolutely check his channel out. Please do. Give it a like. Give it a subscribe. Give it a thumbs up. We like Yang around these parts. So that is happening Friday evening, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, there's something else I was going to mention. For the life of me, it's just gone right out of my head. So let's just go ahead and plow into last night's journey. So the party had gone south through the Yatul Mountains in Greyhawk. And you know what? I'm going to do a fun thing just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what I mean when I'm talking about the Yatul Mountains. Let's see. I will never, as long as I live, understand why sometimes, no. And there's another I don't understand. Please leave me alone. Acrobat just used to be this program that just worked, and then I successfully ran Adobe Acro Reader 4.0 on a 386 laptop with 4 megs of RAM, and that was my portable Dungeon Master's Guide. I could skim through it. It was a little pokey, but it wasn't too bad. This abomination that they have these days, ugh. Anyway, sometimes it's just like, yeah, hey, I'm going to update before I start. Yeah, I'm updated. Reboot your PC. If I'm trying to open a PDF for you guys, that's not happening. I'm not going to say, oh, hang on a second, let me reboot my computer. I mean, I could run it in a VM and then blot it, and it just, oh my God. Oh my God. So, giant pain in the ass. All right, let's take a look here. I want to show you guys, because I've been talking about the Yatul Mountains, and I can pull up a section of Darlene's fantastic Greyhawk map. So let's scroll down a little bit. That may actually be the best one. The map sections that they put in this PDF make no damn semblance of sense or order. This is an old one, old one from when they did the first scans. Now, the first set of PDFs that they sold were done by a company called Bastion Press, which were actually really, really well done. But as the years went on, they took over from Bastion Press, stopped paying them, and then just started putting things out, and they just became awful. Okay, so here we are, and I didn't even realize that Acrobat was up. So if you look, I can't really mark on the map. Can I mark on the map? All right, I can highlight. So the party started there in High Folk. Well, they didn't start there. They actually started the quest. City of Greyhawk is over here. So they had an overland journey that took them from the city of Greyhawk, if you see where I highlighted in the lower right of the map, all the way across. They stopped briefly at Littleburg and then decided, hey, are we going to go north and cut across the Vesive, or are we just going to head to High Folk and then go north and look for where it might be? So they opted for option B, and that has eventually taken them into this hex right there. I don't know if that highlighted very well, and it doesn't really let me change the highlight color, but I can sign the document, I can highlight the document, but I can't just draw on the document. So 2 hexes to the northwest is where they went. And last week, of course, I told you about them getting snowed in and so on. And that's where that brings us up to the current. 14 feet of snow on the windward side of the tower. Less on the leeward side, where they had created their stable and paddock for their horses overnight. They rode the snowstorm out. And then, as bad as things had gotten, the next day, at least, it was very, very windy, like 38-mile-an-hour winds, and freezing cold. But it was not a downpour of snow. So they continued following the path south. Now, the outdoor encounter areas of S4 are a little bit more programmed in that there are set areas where encounters can happen. And then you, the Dungeon Master, consult a table to see which one might possibly happen, rolling a d20. So the party had actually passed the set encounter areas, and they spent a day journeying south in the miserable cold until they came to a small bowl valley at the end of the trail that they were on. And sure enough, on the south edge, there was a tall spire, and opposite it was a cave entrance. So they spent a while securing their camp. Now, I just want to I want to pause here. I've run this module and had parties to say, oh, okay, we're going in, and they go in, they camp in the dungeon. They've spent weeks exploring it, and they come out and their horses are dead or gone, or their camp is wrecked if they bothered putting up a camp out there that they never used. And they ask me, why did that happen? I mean, why wouldn't it happen? It's the wilderness. But in this case, the party, of course, has Daern's Instant Fortress. They have the Lyre of Building, so they created another stable and another paddock and put up Daern's Instant Fortress. And one NPC offered to stay behind at the place. The now NPC character was actually someone who had joined the group a while ago, but unfortunately their schedule just does not permit them to keep playing. And I understand that. Cal, we'll miss you. So that NPC elected to stay behind and keep an eye on the horses. And, I mean, barring an attack by giants or humanoids with a siege machine, the fortress is fairly impenetrable. So, Calcifer, the character, stayed there. The party explored the cave, went down a long, steep flight of stairs, and found themselves in the entry tunnel. So, on the left-hand side of the tunnel, there's a little narrow hallway. They spent a long time debating whether or not to go down the narrow tunnel on the left, on the west. So, we're facing north now. And eventually, after checking for traps and casting an augury and double checking for traps, I don't know why they're so paranoid. Eventually, they went north into the larger cavern. And this is where one of the first most cool things of this module appears. There are 6 tunnels that lead out of this roughly rectangular-ish cavern that they're in. And these tunnels all have carved stone faces to the right of the tunnel openings. And Gary describes them in the module as being like these droopy sort of hangdog expression sort of faces. I'm picturing like the singing sculptures from the Haunted Mansion at Disney World. Hey, Damien. Hey, IR. Good to see you guys. So they cast Detect Evil. The cleric of Ouija, or rather, I'm sorry, the paladin of Ouija's try to detect chaos. Nothing's working. They're not picking up anything evil, trapped, or chaotic. So with that said, the dwarf goes up to examine one of the sculptures because it seems to have been carved from living rock rather than placed there. Well, as soon as he gets close enough, the sculpture says, "Turn back! This is not the way!" And you can see as the thing is speaking on the tongue in its mouth, there's a very large amber stone. A multifaceted cut gem. So he said, okay, I'm going to check out the next one. And as soon as he gets within a couple of feet of it, it calls out again, "Turn back! This is not the way!" And they go through all 6 faces, and all 6 of them tell them the same thing. And all 6 of them have a gem in their mouths. So there's then some debate about what to do, how to get the gems out, whether or not they're lying or telling the truth. So the first thing that comes up is Aurora's character, Petra, approaches one of them, and as soon as she gets close, it repeats the turn back, this is not the way, and says, stick out your tongue, or open your mouth and stick out your tongue. And it does. So she picks the gem up off of it, and it closes its mouth. So they go around and pick up all the gems. Now, the first one, the Amberstone, is very valuable. The others, although they looked as valuable, all turn out to have flaws in how they were cut, or natural flaws, or something like that. So less valuable, but all of them having a good value at least. So they pocket those. And they try to ask questions of each of the stone heads. And the first one that they ask says, mine is the true way, the others are false. Or I don't have the module text in front of me, but basically each one of them says exactly the same thing, stating that their path is the true way, except the last one that they get to they ask if it's telling the truth, and it says different from the others. It says, I watch the only true path. So now they figure they're onto something. And it's a very narrow tunnel that goes south. So they elect to follow this. And it's narrow enough that they have to go single file into the tunnel. But almost as soon as they do, it turns away to the east and opens into a broad gallery. Softly glowing fungus on the walls, floors, and ceiling here and there. And by softly glowing, I'm not talking about like 60-watt light bulb and you can see, a radius of 30 feet around it or anything. I'm thinking like if you ever get a glow-in-the-dark toy when you were a kid, glowing like that, like glowing less than a glow stick. Like you can't even read with it. But as I point out to them, if you let your eyes adjust and stare at it, if something crosses between you and it, you're going to see it. You're going to be able to detect shadows from it eventually. Not shadows, capital S shadows. You guys get what I'm saying. The other thing they notice is that the air stinks of guano, and there are faint chirpings and pipings in the distance. It's here that Jeff, who's playing the Ranger Logan, pipes up and says, we got to extinguish all the light. If we disturb those bats, we could be in a lot of trouble. So relying on the infravision from Grindel the Dwarf, from Alindra the half-elf fighter, magic user, thief, and the ring of infravision being worn by Cain the thief, the rest of the party, being guided, proceeds to move down the hall as quietly as possible. And if you're unfamiliar with Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, this is a long tunnel. This tunnel goes a great distance to the east before it eventually curves around to the north and then goes a even greater distance to the north. So they follow this track with the odor of ammonia assailing them. Basically being essentially sightless as they try and find their way through this cave, eventually coming to a place that sounded like there were fewer bats, the air was slightly cleaner, and the tunnel was a little broader, and indeed, on the left-hand side, they note a junction and hear the sound of running water. The tunnel does continue north from this point, but at this point there's some debate about whether or not they should turn back. Would the one true way have branches and alternate paths. So there's some discussion that maybe that face was the liar, and maybe the other paths, one of the other paths, is the actual way. So taking stock, they at least decided to see what the sound of the rushing water was coming from. So they traveled to the west around a very short but very winding corridor, and they found themselves on a small beach just about 20 feet north-south, and a rapidly rushing stream in front of them that looks like it came from the west and then curved around to the north, and it's on that curve that their little beach is on. And as far as they could see around to the north, with the glow from the magic weapons they have and what, it appeared to empty into a larger body of water. And again, relying on my buddy Jeff's knowledge of caves and so forth, I told him that the water is very cold. It's about 50 degrees. Well, 50 degrees is cold water to me. I don't know about you guys. I mean, you would certainly get hypothermia swimming in it for too long, right? Because it's way lower than your body temperature. So they fretted and debated for a while because there was no obvious way to cross the body of water. It didn't seem to match up to their map. Perhaps they hadn't drawn the map sections long enough. And they wondered what to do next. And it was here, at this point, that we paused for the evening. They were very careful and very deliberate. If this seems like an extremely small amount of progress for 3 hours of adventuring, trust me, they were very deliberate. They did not just rush willy-nilly down the hallways. So what they'll do and which direction they'll go, that ultimately remains to be seen. We'll pick it up next week and find out whether or not they turn around and go back. They try and figure some way to cross this body of water, or they turn and continue to the north. Now, obviously, I, as the DM, know which is the right way. But it's up to the players to figure out if this is the right way or if it's another path. So that was where we left off last night. And after the game, I came to a conclusion. Now, I have blown the trumpet for a long time on this channel about I can DM a huge number of people. And for most people, 12 or 13 players is a huge number of people. But honestly, I think I'm at my comfort limit with a caveat. I could probably DM one or two more people. But if I had, say, 10 people, say just 10 people reach out to me on Discord, they leave comments under videos, what have you, and say, hey, I heard you're really open on Monday nights and, I'd like to join your game, I would have to wave them off at this point. Now, if some of the folks who've departed, Brian and Stacy, Cal, Steve, if they came back and said, hey, can I rejoin your campaign? I would say yes, because they got there before I closed the gates. And I would let them back in. I would make the adjustment to allow them back in. But on a long dungeon expedition, last night it occurred to me, having a full house for me is a dozen players. Now, if you can handle more, then absolutely run a larger group than I do. I could do more than a dozen at an event, at a convention event, but then I can control the number of signups. And if I wasn't feeling like I could do a dozen, I would just say, I have 6 spots open, or I have 8 spots open, or even I have 10 spots open. But if I just said, hey, it's open signups, and I wound up with, 20 people at the table, 24 people at the table, I could do it as a one-off. But I think where I am as far as my DMing skills go, I am happiest with a very large group of players, but not to exceed 12 to 15. There goes Bill gatekeeping again. Yeah, I'm literally gatekeeping. I am closing an actual physical gate to stop people from coming to my table. That's the only gatekeeping you'll ever get from me beyond, you've got to be interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons above any other interests. And that's my rant about gatekeeping in a nutshell. I'm not going to start yelling, I promise. Or maybe you guys want me to yell, and I should. But my only caveat ever to anyone who wants to play in my D&D games is that you want to play D&D. We're not here to make a statement. We're not here to address microaggressions. We're here to play original or first edition advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Or even if somebody roped me into running 5e, that's what we're here to do. We're not here to try and solve the social ills of the world. We're not going to have that kind of a discussion. This is not a political debate team. This is a Dungeons and Dragons game. So I will gatekeep in that I will keep people who bring real world baggage to the table out. I will keep those people out. Jehovah. But in Latin, Jehovah starts with an I. And then the number of people. Yeah. A dozen at my Monday night game. A dozen to 15 at my Monday night game. And the remaining 3 slots being for people who have already been there coming back. And do you play first edition AD&D, or are you interested in playing first edition AD&D? Those are the gates that you must pass before you can sit at my gaming table. And aren't those difficult? Don't those seem cruel and unfair? And to be clear, this isn't some veiled right-wing talking point on my part. What my politics are really aren't any of y'all's business. And I don't care what your politics are. This is literally keeping the flow of the game moving. This is literally trying not to get my game bogged down. Check your politics at the door. I will politely but loudly and insistently talk over any discussions like that come up at the table. Because when you have as diverse, there's that word, a group as I have on Monday nights, my light just shut off. You're going to have a diverse range of politics. And if person A is scub and person B is anti-scub, there's going to be nothing but tears when person A starts extolling the virtues of scub and person B starts decrying the vices of scub. They're going to argue with each other. And we're not going to be playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, first edition. And that's what I want going on at my table. Playing first edition AD&D. Nothing else. When I launch a political debate group and I want 12 people to come in and yell at each other about their feelings on taxation and the military and education and gerrymandering and voter rights and immigration, I'll let you guys know. And I'll watch that channel. Here's a spoiler alert. That's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen. I come here to Dungeons and Dragons to escape the rapidly collapsing world around us, okay? I just wanted to be left alone to grill. Scub isn't real. Well, there. Okay, see, IR is clearly an anti-Scub conspiracy theorist. So that is the thing. The McLaughlin group, yes. Oh, God. So if you're of a younger set, you might not know this. There was a political commentator who had a show on PBS, the McLaughlin group. And he was of a singular personality type, and he got skewered by Dana Carvey on SNL in an impersonation of of John McLaughlin having these various debaters, and he would interrupt them. Wrong. So Chris Kane knows what I'm talking about. Chris says, Greyhawk politics are trouble enough. Why would anyone want to mix real life BS into their escapist fantasy? Baffles me. Yeah. Exactly, Chris. I don't know if Ricky's taking a shot at me for stopping to discuss it. Then get back to playing D&D and quit preaching to the choir. D&D is an escape. RPGs have many roles. That's also very true. Role-playing games is an interesting history. Prior to I Want to Pretend to Be an Elf, role-playing games were like think tank exercises and psychology exercises. It was literally businessmen, military consultants, etc., playing Let's Pretend. It has been suggested, I don't know how true this is or is not, but former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, so it is said, was a fan of the Avalon Hill game Diplomacy. And Diplomacy is a really interesting game, and my hat's off to Avalon Hill for creating this, because Diplomacy, the game from Avalon Hill, and I feel like I have to bolt on those qualifiers, because diplomacy, all right, well, we're talking about the act of being diplomatic. Well, no, Diplomacy, the game. Ah, yes, Diplomacy is a game. No, that's not. Diplomacy, the game from Avalon Hill. Oh, a board game. Yeah. But Diplomacy, the game from Avalon Hill is kind of set in a historical, quasi-historical, pre-World War I setting, but tech doesn't really enter into it. It's not like you're like, okay, I'm going to put production points into fighter aircraft research or anything like that. Diplomacy, or Dippy as it's called by its fans, it basically, you and the other players sit around and try to con the other players into giving up certain concessions and so on and etc. The entire crux of the game has little to nothing to do with dice and charts and figuring numbers. The crux of diplomacy is talking to the player to your left or to your right or across the table from you and browbeating them or coercing them into giving up territory. You literally... Diplomacy is a role-playing game. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Diplomacy is a strategic role-playing game where you try and talk your opponents to death. You try and talk yourself into as much action as possible. And dice outcomes have very little to no impact on how Dippy games work. It's all about talking to other players at the table. So that was the great offshoot of think tank role-playing from an industrial psychological level and from a military game theory discussion level. Oh, Ricky's burning up the chats here. RPGs have evolved, they've not devolved. Things change, but we can choose what version we want. We're free agents in a world influenced by our culture, politics, imagination, media, et al. In other words, different forms of RPGs fill different roles and have evolved to generate different games. No singular RPG will ever be perfect. I mean, except for first edition AD&D. You're absolutely right. No, that's fine, Ricky. That's fine. That's what we come here to talk about these things. I mean, for my money, like somebody once suggested to me that diplomacy would be a fun game for me to try, and I tried it, and God, it bored the tears out of me. I was like, man, I can't even get with this. And I got my wires crossed now. Who was it? Was it GDW? I apologize if I'm forgetting who this was, but there's a game called Supremacy, which is very, very different. Supremacy was more Risk-like, if you're familiar with the board game Risk, and I think everybody is. Risk is one of those games that, like, non-gamers will play Risk for some damn reason, and I've never been able to figure out why people would dive head and shoulders into Risk, but then turn their nose up at playing a game like Supremacy or NATO: The Next War, or any number of actual, like, non-abstracted strategic war games. So when somebody suggested we play Diplomacy, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to send tanks and nuclear artillery and all sorts of things into Western Europe and in a near future war. And they're like, no, Bill, you're thinking of Supremacy. This is Diplomacy. Damn it. Of course not. So, yeah, there's a lot of those think tank games that just kind of... Although I will say, and I've talked about this game before, and you guys can tell me if it's something you'd be interested in exploring further on the show. Back when I was in college, one of the games we played, which was absolutely fantastic, was Blood Royale from Games Workshop. It's one of the few non-Warhammer Fantasy or 40K games from Games Workshop. And it's amazing. It's set in the year 1000 in Europe. So the land masses are familiar. The country's a little less so. Everybody gets a country. You have provinces that produce resources. And you raise armies. You raise taxes to keep your armies fed. And you try and take over Europe from the others. And you actually do have characters. You do roll up characters in the game. But when we played it back in the day, there was a lot of diplomacy-like behavior that would go on, a lot of negotiations over various provinces and such. It's really a wonderful game. We can do a deep dive on it one day if you guys are interested. I found one for $60 and I bought that sucker on eBay. It was complete in box. No, the seller said, oh, well, it's not complete. It's missing an Italian army counter. Like, One counter. I'm not a board game guy. Is that like a deal breaker? Like, if you went to sell me a True First Monster Manual and you said it's complete, well, the back red flyleaf is torn out, but otherwise it's complete and in perfect condition, I'd be like, it's not complete and it's not in perfect condition. The fact that you want whatever amount of money you want for this is absurd. But not being a board game guy, is missing a counter the equivalent of a flaw like that if you collect board games? Because to me, it's like, I can cut out a little piece, I can photocopy or scan and print out a new counter and then cut out a piece of pasteboard and then stick that on there. And it's done. Jack Photon says, Risk is McDonald's, Axis and Allies and similar ilk are a 7-course meal. Yes. Axis and Allies is another one. Although Axis and Allies really, I mean, there's no, I'm going to stop there. I shouldn't say there's no negotiation, because you could certainly potentially have a couple of players in an Axis and Allies game. And I've never had more than 4 players in an Axis and Allies game. But you could certainly potentially have a group of players where 2 of them stop and negotiate over their countries. I mean, ultimately, it's Germany in the middle, Britain and the US on one side, and Russia on the other, if you're just playing like Axis and Allies 1942. If you're playing the full global one, sure, then you've got Japan. Then you've got the United States, you've got the British Commonwealth, you've got Russia. You could potentially, even though Australia is part of the British Commonwealth, you could potentially have somebody running Australia. That's a large game. And I could see where a McDonald's fan who only played Risk would look at that and say, whoa, that's too rich for my blood. But there have been variants of Risk, though, over the years. There was a Risk Starship Troopers, not to be confused. This is, again, one of those things where we have to stop and think about it and then define things. So Avalon Hill was effectively absorbed in the early 2000s by Hasbro. So when they wanted to release big complex board games, they would release them under the Avalon Hill license. And a lot of them were games that had been published by Milton Bradley, which had also been absorbed by Hasbro. So Axis and Allies is now an Avalon Hill game, even though back in the day it wasn't an Avalon Hill game. And in fact, the Avalon Hill crowd probably would have turned their nose up at it. I tried Shogun once as well, but geez, those games can take days. A game like Risk is long enough. Yeah, Shogun is no screwing around. None of those games are simple, easy. Hey, we'll knock this out in a couple hours. Axis and Allies 1942 plays for many hours, but it's considered a lightweight game. But anyway, to get back to the bit of Avalon Hill history. Back in the day, when they were their own company, Avalon Hill got several sci-fi IPs they got a couple of sci-fi IPs to publish. How about that? Starship Troopers and Dune. Well, eventually, when Paul Verhoeven's Video Nasty, that he titled Starship Troopers, came out, there was a Starship Troopers Risk game that came out that was published by Avalon Hill. But it wasn't the Starship Troopers from Avalon Hill that they had published in the 1960s, 1970s. I have that. It's sitting on my shelf over here somewhere. I don't have their Dune game, but I do know where their Dune game is. or I do know where the copy of Dune that I had is. It's back with my father-in-law. He asked for Dune back. That is a rare one. If you ever see that in a used bookstore and it looks complete, snag it. But yes, so there is a flavor of Risk. There was it kind of became the monopoly of war games. There was like Risk 2250, Starship Troopers Risk. I've seen. Sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze into the mic again today. There's see, Starship Troopers Risk. Risk 2250, Lord of the Rings Risk. There's a Lord of the Rings Risk. Just a lot of titles where they basically take the Risk mechanics and put it on a different map is essentially what they do. And the Risk mechanics are really, 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 really simple. You've probably played Risk and you probably know how simple the mechanics are. But games like Shogun, games like Axis and Allies, I mean, they come down to a fairly simple die roll. But when you start talking about production and research and development and what you're attacking with, like I'm sending bombers over Germany versus I'm sending troops into Germany, Risk doesn't have any truck with that. You just move numbered troop counters into an area on the map. And of course, there's the old strategy of hide out in Australia and then spread out to take over the world. IR says Warhammer 40k Risk. Is that a thing? I don't know. I mean, is Warhammer 40k Risk a thing? That sounds like that could be fun. I could play some Warhammer 40k Risk. Except each one of the counters would cost $23, be rife with casting flaws, and only be available from Games Workshop. And they would sue anyone who sold near copies of it. I don't much care for Games Workshop. So, yes, it was a thing. Ha! Well, there you go. I mean, the simplest mechanic in the world, coupled to Warhammer 40k. How well was it received, IR? Type that in the chat. So tomorrow, again, not 100% sure if Kyle is going to be here. I'll tell you what, if Kyle can't make it, I will multicast to Facebook and to YouTube at the same time. But if Kyle's going to be here, we'll be on StreamYard, and the live stream will only be on YouTube. So if you're watching over on Facebook, and I'll type this up on Facebook, so all of my fan on Facebook will know to come over and watch it on YouTube or just miss out on the live stream. But tomorrow it will be myself, Aurora Williams, and hopefully Kyle, either here and on Facebook. Thursday and Friday, back to your normal streams. Then Friday night, I will be on Yang Yan Zhao's live stream. IR says, I honestly don't know. I've never played. Oh, that's a fair enough answer. I will be on Storytime with Yang Yan Zhao. I linked it in the chat. I'll put a link in the Discord. I'll go put the link in the Discord right now again. And that is something you guys should absolutely check out. You should check out Storytime with Yang Yan Zhao. I'll be there Friday. If for no other reason, you should check it out because I'll be on the show. And I think that's about where we're going to wrap it up today, guys. Kind of a short one. Tomorrow we're going to talk with Aurora. Thursday and Friday, we're going to talk more Greyhawk deities. Friday may be a little bit more open. I may take some of your questions Friday. I doubt I'll be screaming and yelling on Friday, like I said, unless something terrible comes along to make me want to scream and yell. But until then, you guys, thank you everyone for subscribing. We're still sitting at 804 subs on the YouTube channel. Let's get to 1,000, guys. Let's get to 1,000, and let's have that convention. When we hit 1,000 subs, we're going to have the Great Underground Virtual Gaming Con. I think I've settled on that as the name. You guys tell me what you think of the name. The Great Underground Virtual Gaming Convention. And it'll be hosted by me. Some other folks have offered to step up and run games also. But we're going to have a virtual convention. We'll probably do it on Discord rather than trying to centralize it from me streaming out to a bunch of people. We'll be running all kinds of fun stuff. First edition AD&D, original D&D, Twilight 2000, Tales from the Loop. Who knows what else? Kyle's action RPG Conflict. You guys can play some Conflict, which I have gushed about so much. So help me get those subs, guys. Help us get to 1,000. I've got a feeling that by the first of the year, come January, we'll have those 1,000 subs on the YouTube channel. Oh, and I do want to point out one more thing before I go. I can now post polls. I don't know if YouTube lowered their threshold or if I crossed the threshold and it wasn't 1,000, but it was in fact 800. But I can now engage a little bit more in the community, courtesy of YouTube. I can put up polls and I can put up, I can post pictures and so on and etc. And even short videos in the comment thread. So it's a little bit more social over on YouTube now. So I'll be doing some more of that. I posted up kind of a jokey poll the other day. Haha, he said poll. Anyway, so I can at least do that now with you guys, but let's strive towards 1,000. Adam says, I still want to run a basic expert game. Adam, that's absolutely fine. So tell people to subscribe, Adam. Go out there and beat the bushes and get them over to the channel to sub, and we'll hit that 1,000 subs goal, and then we can have the con, and you can run basic expert. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful afternoon. I love you all. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by today. It was great to see you, and I will see you tomorrow evening on Wastrel Wednesday live stream when our guest will be Aurora Williams. Until then, be good to each other. I love you all. You make this a lot of fun to do, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.